Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Um, my name is Anne. We're really excited to talk to you about the 4.28 release of the ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript. Before we get started, feel free to let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. And while we're waiting for more people to join, we'll go around and introduce ourselves. And instead of sharing a fun fact this time, I'm going to ask everyone to share that when they were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? So I'll start. My name is Anne Fitz. I'm a product engineer on the JavaScript SDK. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be a pro basketball player. I wanted to be in the WNBA. But unfortunately, I never was tall enough to make that dream a reality. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Androl.
Hey everyone, my name is Androl and I'm a product engineer on the JavaScript API team. So I wanted to be a lot of things. I wanted to be a contortionist, I wanted to become a lifeguard, and I wanted to become a doctor, and I still actually am trying to become a doctor. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Julie, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Julie, and I'm product manager for JavaScript SDK and Calcite. And I went on a field trip when I was little to Scripps Research Center, so I wanted to do cancer research in the ocean, and I never made that dream a reality. But actually, I think they use our software, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, that's it.
Nice. Renee?
Hi, my name is Renee. I'm a software engineer on the JavaScript team. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be a comic book artist. And you can tell I got lots of comic book stuff up there, but that was my thing back then. I really loved drawing stuff and never got into it. Obviously not my end goal, but still something I enjoy.
Nice. All right, next, how about David? You want to go next?
Hello, everybody. I'm David, software developer in the ArcGIS API team working on the 3D stuff. And yeah, when I was young, first I wanted to become an ambulance driver, and then later I wanted to become an actor, and then I discovered computers, and then I changed everything. So now I'm here. Yeah, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. And last but not least, Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm also a product engineer for the JavaScript SDK team. When I was little, I also wanted to be a sports star like Anne. I wanted to play soccer, be a pro soccer player. I played my whole life, but then that slowly dwindled in college. So, but definitely something I wanted to be.
Awesome. All right. Well, I can see we have people joining us from all over the world, some Canada, a lot of people from the United States, Germany, Iceland, India. So thank you all so much for being here. We're so excited to share all these new features with you. So the way it's kind of going to go is we're each going to take turns highlighting some of the new features and doing some demos. But we will be watching the chat throughout the live stream. So if you have any questions that come up as we're demoing, please feel free to ask them in the chat, and we'll go ahead and read them out and ask them to the presenter as they go. So yeah, with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Renee, who's going to start us off talking about web components.
All right, so let me go ahead and get my screen up here for all of you. All right, so this is a feature that I'm really excited about in this release, and that is that we now have a suite of web components that you can use for your application. So the initial release here, we have the map components, which is what I'm showing here, the documentation here. There's also coding components, which is like the arcade editor, and some common components as well, which we'll be fleshing out over the next few releases and stuff. But what's really great here is the idea is that you can go ahead and just add an HTML element like ArcGIS Map, and you'll be able to create a map very easily in your applications for you. Now, if you're a newcomer to the SDK, this is a great way to get started. If you're a seasoned developer, this is something you can take advantage of to start building out your apps I imagine people that are wanting to embed these in their blogs, for example, or maybe a CMS Laravel app or Django or something like that. It'd be really easy to do to get these in there. All right, so we have a really good set of documentation on the SDK site. We also have a series of storybooks that you can go through, which is very cool. So in the storybooks, you'll be able to find information on how to get started. We have tutorials in here on how to build stuff out. The tutorials are pretty cool because really basically you can see here that if you want to display a map component, all you really need to do is, and I'll scroll down over here, just get to it. You add an ArcGIS map element with an item ID and you get a web map. Super simple, super easy to do. There's also a lot of other things you can do. So there is a great tutorial that I like on the Calcite site on how to use Calcite with the ArcGIS Maps SDK. So we took that tutorial that you get from Calcite and we embedded the map components into it. So the map components, I can go ahead and just add like an ArcGIS print element in here. And of course, like I said before, I've got my ArcGIS map element in here as well. And I've got my application over here. So this is the end product that you get from that particular Calcite tutorial, but we're using the map components. So as you can see here, one of the things you can do is that I can go ahead and have a reference to the actual element on the screen. I can listen for an event called view ready to know when the map has been done. And then I can start doing certain things with that particular map at that point. So I can go ahead and open up my Basemap in here and I can change out the Basemap that I want to use, for example. Make it something obvious. Train with labels, right? I got my legend. I've got the bookmarks that come with this particular web map. I can print it. And I've got the different layers in here that I can go ahead and turn on and off and so on. Right? So it's just a really nice way to work with the SDK and build things out. And I also want to point out that if you want to do some more kind of involved stuff, I took this from our samples that we have in the SDK for actually adding a chart to the layer list, right? Which is a bit more of an involved sample. I basically just, in here, I have my reference to my map. I have a layer list reference in here, an element. I can go and grab that and I can do everything that you could do in the sample, which is create a chart. I can find the layer item. I can pull information off that item. And it's still fully interactive. I pan the map around. I'm watching for the view to change. And it's going to update the chart information down here. So you can do all of this still using the map components with the SDK and everything that you normally would use. I also want to point out a very cool feature as well. Because we have these web components, we're able to release wrappers for various frameworks for these components. So we have a React wrapper and we have an Angular wrapper today. The React wrapper gives you something like a map like this. And if you look at the code for this, this is my React code, which is, if you're familiar with React, looks very familiar. And it's kind of neat now. I have an ArcGIS map React component. I can just pass an item ID. I can listen for events the same way that I would if any kind of React component and do something with that. And this is the end product of that. So it's really cool. It's a really nice feature that you get by using the map components in this release of the SDK. It is beta, so we have a lot of things coming out over the next few releases for this. So keep an eye out for changes coming up and try it out and give it a shot. Thank you.
Awesome. Renee, we have a question for you in the chat. Well, the question is, will this be something to replace the reactive utils? And if not, will it work well with reactive utils?
So the reactive utils work on objects and classes out of the Maps SDK, but you can't use reactive utils to watch for like property changes on elements. You can, however, create a mutation observer to watch for attribute changes on those DOM elements and do something very similar to reactive utils. We'll probably get a sample out there showing how you can create your own mutation observer to watch for, say, the scale and the zoom on the map to change, and maybe various other properties that you want to look for. So it's not quite the same, but there is some observability that you can do in the DOM natively.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Great. Well, thank you for that great intro to web components. Next up, we're going to pass it over to Anjul, who's going to talk about some of the date and time updates. Go ahead, Anjul.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. Can you guys see my screen, I hope?
Yeah, you can see it.
Okay, so I'm here to talk about date and time enhancements. So if you work with date and time values in JavaScript applications, you know these values are displayed in a local time zone of the browser or the device where you're displaying the JavaScript application in. So for example, in this screenshot here, we are displaying hurricanes data. And if you were displaying this information somewhere in Eastern time zone, all the date and time values will be displayed in the Eastern time zone. And then if you're displaying the same data in a Pacific time zone on a device where it's in the Pacific time zone, then all the same date and time value will be displayed in Pacific time zone. So while this default behavior is perfectly fine for a lot of use cases, obviously isn't suitable for all the different use cases. So for example, let's say we were creating a map showing how fire is spreading over time in a specific geographic location. And we wanted to show the date and time values on this map in the time zone, in a local time zone where the fire is burning. Then we have to write the code to shift the date and time values to that specific time zone. So this isn't the most complicated code, but we still have to write more than few lines of a code, and we have to write the same code for every JavaScript application where we want to display date and time values in a specific time zone. So starting at version 4.28, developers will be able to set time zone on a 2D map view with a single line of a code, and date and time values will be displayed in that time zone on the map. And there are a few exceptions, and we'll talk about those exceptions a little later. So this enhancement is not only available to JavaScript developers, users also can set the time zones in the map viewer. And users can save the web map, and time zone information will be persisted in the web map. And users can open this web map anywhere in the world, and date and time values will always be displayed in a user-picked time zone, always, okay? So we will be adding support for time zones in a 3D scene view in ArcGIS Pro and Runtime, so that users will have a same time zone experience across ArcGIS platform. So let's take a look. Also, I want to point out, when you set the time zone, we are only shifting the date and values for display purposes. We are not changing your stored date and time values in the data. Want to make that clarification. So let's take a look at how you can set the time zone in a JavaScript application. So time zone is a stream property on a 2D map view, and you can set the time zone to system. This is the default time zone. Basically, this indicates just keep the existing behavior as of today and display the date and time values in the local time zone of the browser or device. Or you can set the time zone to a specified INA time zone name, and date and time values will be displayed in that INA time zone. Last, you can set it to unknown. This means basically do not adjust the date and time values as they're coming from the service. Display those date and time values in a time zone of the service or the layer. So if you set the time zone to a specified INI time zone, there are about over 400 INI time zones you can pick from. And if you're creating a JavaScript application to give all these options to your users, then you don't have to manually type in all this information. You can take advantage of Calcite input time zone component. So this component gives you a drop-down list of all the different INA time zone names, and you don't only have to scroll through this. You can type in the name of the INA time zone you're looking for and then pick it. So INA time zones essentially gives you pass in the region and then also the most populous city in a specific time zone. So that's how INA time zones work. So let's take a look at a SDK sample. So this sample here is showing a next 72-hour precipitation forecast over United States. And this data is updated with 6-hour intervals, and we are using the time slider widget to see how the precipitation is going to move over United States over next 72 hours with 6 hours interval. So if you notice that the time slider displays the date and time values here, and this date and time values are being displayed in a Pacific time zone because I am in Redlands, California, and my browser time zone is in Pacific time zone. So look at this. Starts at 11 p.m. on November 1st through November 4th until 5 p.m. So I've added calcite input time zone component here. So I'm going to switch the time zone to New York, Eastern time zone. So if I change this, you will notice that the time and dates will update on the time slider to match the New York time or Eastern time. So let's take a look at the code. So I've added the calcite component just with a single line of a code, right? And then I'm listening to the calcite inputs time zone change event on this component. And when user picks a new value, I'm grabbing the value from the time zone picker and assigning it to view time zone. So next, we've added 3 new date focus field types, and they are date only, time only, and timestamp offset. So before I talk about these 3 new field types, let's talk about how date is stored in your data as of today, namely in feature layers and map image layers, or map feature services and map services. So to store the date and time value information, you have to create a date field type. And date field type stores the values as epoch values. And epoch values are just the number of seconds that passed since January 1st of 1970 in Greenwich time zone. So because we are storing number of seconds in a date field, we cannot store date as a whole or time information without the date information. And also with date fields, all the values stored in the date fields are considered to be in the same time zone. So for example, if you're storing a date and time values in a date field in the ArcGIS online hosted feature services, those date values are stored in UTC time zone. All of them are in a UTC time zone. So these are the characteristics of the date field. So if you're storing only, let's say, date as a whole, there are use cases for it. For example, maybe you are storing start and end of school year in a different school districts. Or maybe also you want to show the opening and closing dates for different national parks. So in this case, time information is not relevant, and we don't really care about the time zone in this information. But if you are storing these values in a date field, then the time information is added automatically. And then if you're storing those date values, like I said, in ArcGIS Online hosted feature services, they're going to be stored in a UTC time zone. So you as a developer have to know all this information. And if you're doing queries and stuff, you have to adjust your queries to account for all these different scenarios. So also with the time, examples of storing time only information is maybe you're showing the opening hours of businesses like grocery stores or coffee shops, where we don't need to store the date information or time zone information, just only want to show the 24 hours, then you can't do it with date field. And also you can certainly store date and time values in different time zones in one date field. So with that in mind, let's talk about the new field types. So date only field allows you to store date as a whole, and this doesn't store the time information or time zone information. The dates are stored as they are and used as they are. Same thing with the time only field, allows you to store 24 hours in that field. So at this point, some of you may be asking, well, why have different field types for date and time? I can store them in a string fields, that's still a valid choice. But if you store your date and time only information in those two field types, or in these three field types, you will be able to use the smart mapping capabilities, and also you can run simple statistics on it. And if you have a date only and timestamp offset fields, then also you can enable time awareness on your feature and map services using those two field types. Next, timestamp offset field allows you to store the date and time value along with its time zone or UTC offset. Okay, so namely, we store them in this format. So looking at this format here, you can see these date and times are absolute. We know exactly which time zone they're meant to be in. Okay, so because we can store the UTC offset with the values itself, we can start storing date and time values in different time zones in one field. So that's the nice thing about timestamp offset fields. So let's take a look at a sample. So in this SDK sample, we're looking at the fatal accidents of 2021 in United States. And on the map, we are displaying the accidents by the time of the day. And we are applying a unique value renderer to this layer and grouping the values, our information by the time of the day, accidents by the time of the day, sorry. So we can do this with a date field. But remember, the date fields are stored in a one time zone. So if you're showing a data spanning multiple time zones, you have to write lots of code to make it possible to create this kind of visualization. But because timestamp offset field contains its offset values, it's simple to create such visualizations. So let's take a look at the render code. So here we are using a arcade expression, grabbing the timestamp offset field value. Then we are using an hour function to extract the hour from this timestamp offset value. Then we check if the hours are between midnight and 6 a.m., make it night, between 6 a.m. Till noon, make it morning, and noon till 6 p.m., make it afternoon, and the rest of it, make it evening, and create the unique value renderer and assign it. Again, this is really simple. You can see here, just extract the hours and assign the symbols. And then on the right-hand side here, you see the graphic that shows the total number of accidents by the time of the day. And then you can see that the accident number go up early in the morning or late at night. And I can click on a bar, then also the feature effect is applied to highlight the features that fall within that hour period. And you can see the hours are from 0 to 23 to 24 hours a day. And then also, if I click on a weekly, it shows the accidents by the time of the day of the week. And you can see the accidents also tend to go up on the weekends. And if I click on a day bar, then also it's showing me the accidents distribution by hours on Saturday. All right, so let's take a look at how this daily by time of the day accidents chart is created. Again, this would have been almost nearly impossible to create with a date field, but with the timestamp offset field, it's very easy to do. So here, I am calling, it's like calling a run query function and passing two values here. You can see this is a query to extract hours from the timestamp offset field. So let's take a look at the run query function here. So we're creating a query and we're going to run our query on every feature stored in the service. And we are getting a count statistics from the accidents data. And then we're going to group our count statistics by the time of the day. So remember this query statistics here. We're extracting the hours from the timestamp offset field. So the count statistics will return the total number of accidents for each time. And then also we are grouping our statistics by the same, also by the hours, so that we get the total number of accidents grouped by the hours and ordered in the ascending order. And then we feed this information to the chart and we get this chart. So again, with this is easily done with a timestamp offset field, but would have been much harder with a existing date field. So I also wrote a blog on timestamp offset field, and then two URLs are being shared on the screen, I believe. So please check out those two blogs for more information. Back to you, Anne.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat about time, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to the next person. I think Julie is up next to talk about oriented imagery. Thanks so much, Andrel.
Yeah, that was great, Andrel. Very thorough demos and great blog. Okay, so I'm going to talk about oriented imagery, and I'm pretty excited to cover this because it's a brand new way for people to work with their imagery. And it's not the traditional type of imagery you might expect. This is could even be pictures taken off of a phone. It could be like close range drone inspection imagery. And so this is a new layer type. You can see it here in the map viewer. What you see, these little dots here, these are like the photo locations, like where the photos were taken. And then the yellow, this is the footprint of like all the coverage of my imagery. So I want to kind of explore some of the things that you can do with this. So here you see the layer, and I have my image location selected. And this is the new oriented imagery tool here. So what it allows me to do is I can click on the map, and what it does is it takes that XY location and pulls up the best available imagery for that exact location. And so what it's doing is really mapping each individual pixel in this photo with the location on the map. So I can move it around, and I can actually see what that coverage that I'm looking at on the map. Some of the other things I can do is, all right, if this is the location I'm interested in, I can also say, all right, what are the other image footprints that cover that same location? So I can turn that on and see all these different images that were taken that cover that specific spot. I can also have a look at the image gallery. So this is just a gallery view of all the different images that cover that same location as well. And again, I can go in and zoom around. One of the tools that I like is this is a tool that lets me click on the image, and then I can see the corresponding XY location of where I'm clicking. So what's interesting here is that when you're taking pictures with your phone, or maybe you have something more sophisticated to take really high precision images, it's collecting metadata, and that metadata is extracted, and that's what's being used to correlate the location of the pixels in the image to what's on the map. The way that this all comes to life is basically you bring in your images into Pro. The Pro's processing it to get out that metadata, and then it's published as an oriented imagery layer. And that's what I'm consuming here in the map viewer. A couple other tools.
Quick question. Sorry for interrupting. Could this work in 3D? For example, a drone photo of under the bridge.
Yes. So that is there's actually Oriented Imagery Classic, which was the first kind of project that the team worked on to bring out this Oriented Imagery capability. It's currently only available in Experience Builder and a very specific tool. But as for integration into the rest of the system in ArcGIS Online and through the map viewer and the JavaScript SDK, it's not available in 3D yet, but that's coming soon. So yes, that will be something that you'll be able to do. So this is the other tool that I was talking about here. You can see just kind of like a mapping of all the different image locations and where the current one is, that red dot. And then also you can do like, change the image, let's see, brightness and kind of adjustments so you can study what exactly is in the image. So what I did was I took this capability and I brought it into my a custom application. And of course, as developers, you can wire in any of these capabilities into your own workflow. So what I did is I created a workflow where I was like pretending to be a person that works for the city of Munich. And I'm creating work orders where I identify something going on in my city. and I want to address it. So for example, here I've got, some graffiti going on, and I can locate like, okay, this is where the tunnel is and where I might want to, paint over this or get rid of the graffiti. So I'm going to go ahead and create a work order in that same exact location. I say it's graffiti, it's blight, and let's see, graffiti in the tunnel, and create the feature. So now that's created the feature, and then I can go back and I can see the other work orders that I've created. Now, something I love about oriented imagery is, when you're actually doing something like data collection, where you're taking a photo, you're attaching that to the feature, those are added as attachments, and those photos are just associated with that individual feature. What oriented imagery is this is actually not directly tied to features. This is just relating an XY location to the map, to the imagery. So that means I can go and apply this kind of layer to really any operational data set that I have, that exists in a particular location, and pull up the best image for that location. So for example, let's see, maybe I'm not sure which one has something good, but click on this guy. I can view the available imagery for that location, and there I have it. And I could really apply that to any sort of operational layer that I have. Now, I wanted to show you just how you work with the oriented imagery. It's just like any other layer type. I simply reference, what layer I'm pulling it from, and then I add it to the map. So nothing really surprising there. Of course, you can also add it as a portal item as well. Now, the other thing, so the viewer here, this is like a widget. So you add it just like you would another widget. You're giving it a reference to the map view, and then telling it where in the DOM you want to place that component. So again, another typical way you would add a UI component within your application. I wanted to talk about one last thing, because I've actually never used this. Is the first time I've used this before. Is launching directly into that editing workflow was kind of cool. So I wanted to show my code for that. What I'm doing is I'm getting the reference point from the oriented imagery viewer. So that's when I used this tool and I clicked on the map, and then I got that location. So I got that reference point from the oriented imagery viewer, and then I used the editor, so that's the widget, it's view model, and I went straight to creating a feature in that exact location using this.
Julie, are you sharing your code? Because
I am sharing my
what
code.
you're trying. I can't see it.
Let me share that. Thanks, Anne.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm glad you're paying attention, Anne.
And while you're getting that shared, we have a question in the chat. Do you know if the oriented imagery layer will work in Experience Builder, or is it just Map Viewer?
It will work in Experience Builder. I'm not sure if they've come out with a widget based on the JavaScript SDK yet.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but you could write a custom widget, because anything you can do the Maps SDK, you can do the Experience Builder. But we can get back on the timing for a widget based on JavaScript SDK. So this is the code that I was thinking you guys were looking at. But it's very simple code. So basically, here's where I'm getting the reference point for oriented imagery viewer. And then this is the editor view model, start, create, feature, workflow, at feature, edit. That's a long name. But basically, that's what allowed me to pass in that initial feature I wanted to use as a starting point and launch directly into the workflow. And man, I think that's a really powerful way to work with editor, because you can actually programmatically start that editing workflow exactly the way you want it, rather than depending on the user interaction, starting from scratch. So if you have a workflow like that, to me, that's pretty powerful. Okay, so that's the end of my oriented imagery show. And now I'll hand it back to Anne.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. Let me just get my screen share in here. Okay, awesome. So I want to talk about a few things that were added this release. And the first is the new Basemap styles. So we're bringing support for the Basemap style service, which contains a variety of new Basemap styles and also localized place labels. So in this app, you can see that I'm using the navigation style and Spanish place labels. So you'll see that we get labels like España instead of Spain and whatnot. So this brings a variety of new styles, both ArcGIS and OSM, so you can easily bring in the outdoor style, for example. And this is just done with a new style property on the Basemap, this new Basemap style class, where you reference the ID, which is the provider and the style, and the language as well. And we provide support for a variety of languages, like I can select Japanese, and all of our place labels will be displayed in Japanese characters. Now, we also provide, besides ArcGIS styles, we also provide support for OSM, OpenStreetMap styles. So if I change to navigation, we get the OSM navigation map. Now, in addition to all of these Basemap languages, we also support both global and local languages. And I think the local one is pretty cool because it displays each country, the place labels for each country in its local language. So we see that Germany is labeled as Deutschland. And as we scroll around, you can really see those labels change based on what country you're looking at. So really exciting stuff. This is all coming from the REST API based Basemap styles service. So on this page, you can see the full list of ArcGIS styles and OSM styles. And we've also added 2 new tutorials to our SDK that explain how you can add these to your map with the change the Basemap style and change the Basemap language. And I believe those chats are already in the video description. I believe these links, are already in the video description. So you can go ahead and check out those tutorials there.
Leanne,
Yes.
there is a question for you from Navidad. How many languages does it support?
That is a great question. The languages that are supported are also listed here. So I think it's like the majority of the languages, if not all of the languages that are supported with the JavaScript API are also supported here. So we can send these links out too. Mm-hmm.
One more question. Will it work in a map viewer if I create a web map?
Yes. So I don't think there's any way of like creating a web from the map viewer using these Basemap styles in the map viewer directly just now. But if you were to like create it from like this and then save it to the web map from your JavaScript API application, it will save and will render the same in the map viewer.
One last question. Any chance to host the Basemap styles on Enterprise, or is it only for ArcGIS Online?
That's a great question. I think it will probably be supported in the next version of Enterprise, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Maybe Julie, do you know when the latest JavaScript API features are brought into Enterprise?
I believe the next Enterprise release will have it. Is it? Yeah, I'll respond in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Great. Well, thank you for all those great questions. I'm going to go ahead and move on to my next topic, which is an exciting one. We also at this release added support for feature-to-feature editing within the editor widget. So this is feature-to-feature relationship. So in this map right now, I have 2 different layers. I have a trees layer and a planting areas layer. And there's a relationship between the planting areas and the trees. So now at this release, if I go to edit this planting areas feature, we'll see that I get all these related records, these feature-to-feature related records shown in my widget. And here you can see all the different trees. We can go in and edit information about one of these trees, or we can even go and add a new tree as well. So this is all part of the editor widget. In this app, I'm currently this is all brought in from a form I've configured in my web map. Sorry, let me refresh so you can see the code. So all I'm doing here is just bringing in the web map portal item, which has my form configured. But if you wanted to configure this all in code on with the JavaScript SDK, you can use this relationship element form content type, and it will you'll have to define it yourself. Doesn't just come by default. So if you want to show this feature-to-feature editing in the editor widget, you'll need to define that relationship element. And yeah, with that, that's all I have. I think I'll pass it off to David if there's no other questions. All right, David, I can't hear you if you're talking. Can anyone hear David?
No.
Okay, maybe we'll pass it off to Lauren instead, and we'll come back to you, David, once your sound's working.
And do you hear me
Oh,
now?
I can hear you now.
There it goes.
There was some problem. I'm sharing my screen again. Sorry for the hiccup. So
No worries.
I want to just quickly talk a bit about the latest changes or like features in the 3D part of the API. And I want to start with color theming, which we now support also on the 3D API. And what color theming is about is that we have a lot of clients and customers who want to embed their API in their custom applications. And big part of custom application design is like this kind of idea of corporate identity, where you have everything according to colors and typography around your company. So what we had until now was that we had a very kind of orange kind of theme around all our tools and analysis tools and all of the editing, and customers wanted to kind of change these colors so that basically the experience with the scene view matches basically the color identity of the application our clients develop. And so what you now can do is basically you can specify color, which is then carried over to all the analysis tools and the editing tools. So there's a really nice example in the SDK documentation. And the way this works is really simple. You basically have on the view object, you have a theme property, and there you simply assign an object with what we call the accent color, and then there's also a separate color you can specify for the text. And this is basically what we do here to switch between two different color themes. So here I have now a green theme, and then I can, by a click of a button, I can switch over and change to the pink theme. You can also use this to, for example, indicate some problem with your interaction, where you maybe show everything in red so that users are aware, okay, there's some problem here. So you can make different uses of this. And just to note, the color change here, that's the calcite components. So we have also some CSS change here on top of that. But the colors for the theme basically are the colors here for the analysis.
David, quick question. Sorry to
Yes.
interrupt. Are there only predefined colors, or can you
No.
add anything to match a corporate design?
Yes, you can use any color. Yes, it's basically the S3 color. You can specify the strings or S3 colors, which you can specify the RGB components. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. So the next thing I want to talk about is our update on 3D editing. But before I do this, just want to quickly mention with the 3D Basemap, which is kind of which we introduced with the last release, where you have these kind of 3D object buildings here. You can now up to this point, you basically had to specify the Basemap portal item and put it in the web scene. But now you can, instead of using that, you can basically just use a simple string, as you can do with other base maps. So in the documentation, you can see that there's basically these string references to the different base maps. And now we introduced the Topo 3D, Navigation 3D, and Navigation Dark 3D. So you can just basically specify the 3D base map using these string identifiers. So it makes things a bit easier. And that's a little handy change. And then on the scene layer editing side, we are still in beta for scene layer editing. As a reminder, scene layer editing is is basically this idea of being able to go in, and now I'm basically masking out some parts of the base map, and I can now basically I have a scene layer which I can use to upload new 3D objects. And what we did is we are still working on this. We are committed to the scene layer editing story, and it's a very big core component of us, and we would just want to make sure it's very stable and meets all the quality expectations. So we are planning to be out of beta by next release, but we increased a lot of the robustness and the usability. So for example, now you can specify zip files when you upload your data. And so we basically have been working on these different things for the whole experience. We are continuously improving also on the service side to make things more scalable, and to support all the use cases we expect our customers to have. And that's basically all for the 3D update side. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. Next up, we're going to pass it over to Lauren, who's going to talk about some other enhancements to the API.
Thank you, Anne. Let me share. So some of the cool things I wanted to show off for this release was a big one is we updated more of the design of the pop-up at this release. So I'm going to show kind of what 4.27 looked like and compare it to 4.28. So the big change we made was we actually refactored the pop-up to utilize Calcite components now. So in the back end, it's using our Calcite design system components to create the UI of the pop-up. So at 4.27, you could see in our pop-up, we have the action bar kind of, there's a lot going on in this upper bar here with the actions and the pagination buttons along with the feature menu button. The feature menu just kind of lists out the features that you in the area you selected and what's selected. So this will be a list of any of the features coming back from any of the layers in the map. So in this example, I have a polygon layer with a polyline layer, which is the national park boundaries and the trails within the national park. So here we kind of just have a list of a bunch of different stuff from that data. Then we have, these colors within the pop-up that are predefined by default. You cannot change it. So now with the new pop-up design updates, we actually updated the top bar. So now our pagination buttons are in the upper left, so we can page through the features. And we updated the feature menu. So now it'll allow you to see which features are within each layer. So this is actually the layer of the national park boundary. And this is the name of the trails. And so we can actually distinguish which features are coming from which layers. So this is really nice that you can, determine which feature you're going to select. We can select that. And then we have a new action bar just by itself, which follows the Calcite design system pattern. So it's adding all of our actions. And so you can have a bunch here and it'll look a little nicer. It's not as cluttered. A big thing that I wanted to show too was we now have a way to customize pop-up colors. I know a lot of people were waiting for this, so I'm glad we got it in this release. But if you're familiar with building out a chart within a pop-up, here's some just a small code snippet showing my pop-up template and the content within it. And the media infos is how you create that chart. So we added a chart here. It's a pie chart showing the camping visits within each national park. I have 5 fields. I can't count. All we have to do is, this was all here before, but we added this colors property within the chart media info value. And so now you can specify an array of colors, either RGB array, or you can actually use Esri colors as well. So just specifying a string within a color. And we now have our own custom colors. So this is helpful when you want to match the theme of your app, maybe match the layer style colors, or match other pop-up content colors that you may have. And here, so I just, I wanted to match kind of the outdoor campy theme. So I went with earthy tones. So the cool thing about the pop-up chart colors is this is actually something that can be persisted and saved within a web map. And you can also specify these pop-up chart colors within ArcGIS Online, within the map viewer. There's a blog that my colleague Lauren Ballantyne wrote about how to do this within the map viewer. It's a really good blog. She talks about how you can use the UI to just set those colors, and then they have color ramps along with using arcade elements. So you can actually utilize arcade to set those colors as well if you're trying to return a chart element in your arcade script.
Lauren, we have a couple questions for you in the chat.
Okay.
So the first one is, can we customize where we want to see the pop-up elements?
Yes. So depending on the order of the pop-up elements that you put within your pop-up template content, it will change the order of your elements. So say if I wanted a text element before my pie chart, I would add a text element in this content array first, and then you can add your media and things like that afterwards.
Awesome. And then the next question is, so the pop-up is a web component or a calcite component?
Not necessarily. What it's doing is it's utilizing our calcite components itself. So we built it to use those components. So not necessarily a component itself.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.
Cool. This link for this blog is in the links within the YouTube video, if you want to take a look at that. Next, I want to quickly talk about some new label placement that we updated at this release too. So we enhanced how we place labels for non-map image layer polygon features. So I just want to show a quick example at 4.27 versus 4.28. So here we have some polygons, kind of odd shaped ones. We put the labeling placement was a little off on some of these polygons, if you can see. So at 4.28, we updated the way it's placed. So now you could see this label for this building here, it was kind of off of the polygon before, and now we have it within the polygon. So we kind of anchored those labels to be in a different location, and it's better placement. So another example would be this lake. The label was placed kind of outside the lake a little bit. Now we centered it more within the polygon. So this is for non-map image layers. So if all the different types of layers we have, you'll see this updated label placement automatically, and also within Map Viewer. So we had some really cool enhancements to pop up and labeling this release. So hopefully you guys can utilize those. I'm going to pass it now over to Julie to talk a little bit more about some events that are coming up.
Lauren, one more question before we hand it over to Julie. So the question is, when you zoom into a polygon, will the label appear in different spots?
It renders within kind of the same location. So it's the same how it used to work, where it was just anchored in a different spot. Now it's anchored within the polygon a little.
Just better placement.
Better. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. So next up, we'll pass it over to Julie, who's going to talk to us about some upcoming events.
Okay, so I'm really excited about our upcoming event, our Esri European Developer Summit. I saw actually a lot of you are joining from Europe, so this is a great venue for you guys to join us. We have a whole lot planned for this event. Even if I go to the plenary session, you might see someone you recognize. There's Anne. This is this event is not just a repeat of the Palm Springs Dev Summit that we have earlier in the year. We have like all new content that's focused on our latest and greatest technology, and we're working really hard to prepare for this. So I really would love to see you there. You can also meet with us at the showcase, and there's developer social. So definitely come join us if you're available in Berlin, November 14th to 16th. We also have the Palm Springs Dev Summit coming up next March. Believe it or not, we already have the entire agenda planned. We've been working really hard to come put together a very great plan for everyone, covering a wide range of topics. We have more than, I think it's over 30 sessions just dedicated to web development. Actually, there's more than that, covering so many different topics. So this is a really great opportunity for you to come learn about all the latest tech, see it in action, come meet the team at the showcase, bring the work, whatever you're working on, talk with us about it, connect with other developers. So definitely would love to see you guys there at the Dev Summit next March.
Julie,
So,
quick question. If
Yep.
someone cannot attend, will this be streaming online?
So there'll be a handful of sessions. Which are we talking about? The Palm Springs Dev Summit,
I think the question was about Palm Springs.
Okay, yeah. So what we do is we select a handful of sessions that are live streamed, so they're hybrid, both in person and streamed live. It is, I have to say, it is a subset, smaller subset. Definitely attending the event in person is a much better benefit because not only can you see all the sessions, but you also get to interact with the team, ask your questions, and all of that. But you do have the opportunity, if you can't join, to get those live sessions. You can even interact with the presenters, so you can ask questions. There's a live question and answer capability. So for those live streamed hybrid sessions, you have that. And then after the conference, we do share all of the tech sessions on our video sharing portal. So you can see all of the sessions from any year's conference there after the fact.
So they just clarified in the chat that they were asking about Europe, but I believe Europe will not be live streamed. So
that's right. It's not live stream, and I believe we don't share the videos. They're not actually recorded as well. So that's a in-person event.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Julie. If we could get everyone's videos back in the chat, there's some final questions that we want to ask before we end. This one's for Lauren. Can you customize colors in the chart instead of using the color ramps?
Yeah, I think you're referring to in map viewer because there's the color ramp options there. But yes, you can on each field that you specify within your pop-up chart, you can change that color individually. So you could set a color ramp, as inspiration maybe, and then kind of change individual ones if you like.
Awesome. And then we have some final labeling questions. I don't know if Lauren, you want to answer these, or if Julie knows the answer. So the question is, if we have a large polygon and our users are zoomed into an area, not where the label is anchored by default, the label doesn't appear. Are there plans to change that behavior?
That's definitely. Sure. I've definitely heard of that requirement before. I assume that it is on the list, but I don't know that it's currently worked on yet. We are aware of that, though.
Sounds good. All right. Well, I think we're running out of time. It's almost 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and let you all go. But thank you so much for joining us today. If you liked this video, if you like this format, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and go ahead and subscribe to our Esri Developers channel so you don't miss any future events. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.